Of the American Club. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about where we stand, what we're doing, and refreshing everybody's memories about who we are. Our first speaker today, we're just going to jump right into it, is Joseph Hughes, who is our CEO and our chairman. Joe?
Ladies and gentlemen, how nice to see you here. Welcome to the American Club and American Hellenic, actually. Pre-Christmas matinee entertainment. It's pretty much the same procedure as last year. But I do want to ask a question first before proceeding on to my presentation, and it's this. How many of you here remember somebody called Hillary Clinton? You see, they say that a week is a long time in politics, but a month, my goodness me, that's an eternity. Actually, you know, what does Bill Clinton say to Hillary after sex? Honey, I'll be home in 20 minutes. This is a little unfair. I've got a joke about Mr. Trump as well at the end, but of course one of the stories about Hillary, and I'm sure she'll keep her end up, so to speak, in American political life going forward, is that when she was on the campaign trail during the recent election, she went to an elementary school in California, and this was obviously for various photo ops, and the lesson was an English lesson, and they were asking the children to define the word tragedy by way of an example, you see. So one little girl stands up and said, it would be a tragedy if a little old lady on a Zimmer frame were knocked over by a bus and was killed. No, says Hillary, that wouldn't be a tragedy, that would be an accident. Oh, all right, well, does anybody else have an idea? So a little boy stands up and says, Mrs. Clinton, if there was a school bus full of kids and it went over a cliff, that would be a tragedy. No, she says, no, that would be a great loss, but I don't think it would be a tragedy. So the silence descends on the room, and then after a minute or so, another child puts his hand up and says, Mrs. Clinton, if you're flying along in your campaign jet and it's hit by a missile and comes crashing down, that would be a tragedy. Whereupon she says, well, preening herself, well, of course, yes, I mean, that would most certainly be a tragedy. Yes, it would be a great tragedy. But tell me precisely why you think it would be a tragedy. Well, says a little boy, well, it wouldn't be a great loss, and I think it's very unlikely to have been an accident. I'll come on to a Trump example a little later on. You see, these particular jokes about Hillary please Mr. Solarino quite a bit, actually. I don't know whether he'll feel the same way about Trump, but anyway, be that as it may, let's return to business. Ladies and gentlemen, a progress report on the affairs of the American Club and Eagle Ocean Marine, December 2016. I begin by looking at the breakdown of tonnage that we have by membership at the moment, the distribution of the tonnage entered in the club. The management domicile there is indicated by that pie chart, and you can see that a very large proportion of our business is generated from EMEA, and I'm very pleased to say that a very significant part of that, the major part indeed, comes from here in Greece. We are deeply appreciative of the support which we get from the Greek market, and it is very encouraging, I think, to see an upturn in activity and sale and purchase activity here in this most important of world centres for shipping, and that perhaps is a harbinger of improved freights and better prospects for the industry at large over the years to come. We are pretty strong in Asia in tonnage terms. North America, of course, is to be expected a large part of our tonnage, and the rest of the world is relatively small, and that's mainly actually Latin America and Australasia. By vessel type, we have a preponderance of tankers and tanker types at the moment, with 46%, 37% of bulk carriers, and the remaining two sectors there make up the remaining 16% of overall tonnage entered in the club by type. What's interesting about that is over the last couple of years there's been a change between the tanker and dry bulk sector proportions of the overall tonnage entered, as might be imagined, with the dry bulk sector, of course, having undergone a great deal of stress in more recent years, and the tanker market, by contrast, at least until quite recently, showing greater strength in the freight markets. So that relative proportion has changed somewhat over the past 12 months or so. Looking at membership by relation to premium payments, again, EMEA is the largest single sector, 48% there. 35% comes from North America, which is proportionately larger than the tonnage entered from that part of the world. 16% of Asia and 2%, or 3% is it, yes, from the rest of the world. There's a little bit more balance in that respect between the different areas. And by vessel type, you can see that they're almost identical quadrants of premium volume coming into the club, which I would suggest is quite a favourable position to be in the sense that we are not overexposed in terms of premium volume and therefore credit, as it were, the availability of credit from any one particular sector. There's a good balance of income from the different areas there. Looking at claims and financial trends, the first graph here looks at the development of retained claims over the last several years. Again, this is similar to the graph that was produced last year, and I think some of you may be familiar with it. The first line there indicates the retained claims cost per gross ton. No, it doesn't. It's the number of retained claims per million gross tons. I beg your pardon. So that's adjusted for the relative size of the club. And you'll see that it shows that from 2011 onwards, there's been a fairly stable development in terms of claims frequency. Obviously, for the current year, 2016, and these figures being as of October the 20th, we still are in a relatively early stage of development. So that figure will increase necessarily as the year develops further. But I think you'll agree that the frequency there has been remarkably stable, and in fact going down from 2008 into 2011 and beyond. This graph shows the actual claims cost per gross ton over a similar period. Again, you see a period of relative stability from 2010 onwards. 2015 was an extremely good year. That's the best year we've had for a number of years, and it's actually developing in surplus at the moment, which is rather encouraging. 2016, in terms of the underlying attritional claims that we have, that is to say claims below $250,000 per incident, which we regard as the ceiling for attritional exposure, is trending rather higher at this stage. But that's mainly due to an increase in a couple of claims at the beginning of the year, which are relatively severe. But we're hopeful that that will stabilize as, again, the year moves further towards completion. The development of pool claims has shown a pattern, and this is our contribution to other clubs' international group pool claims, has shown a pattern, I think, with which many of you will already be familiar by reference to what has been read in the press. You'll see that in 2011 and 2012 there were high points, a peak in those years, relatively speaking. And of course the 2011 year was affected by the Reina and the Costa Concordia accidents. 2012 didn't have as individual claims anything of the severity of those two claims that I just mentioned, but there were a relatively large number of larger claims at that time. But since then, the trend has been quite benign, and the pool exposures have been relatively quiescent over the period since 2013, in effect, and we hope that that trend will continue. Of course, because pool claims necessarily, in the sense that most of them involve human error, they can be very volatile, but we are optimistic that the trend will continue to be in a favourable direction. Looking at the development of premium per gross tonnes and average vessel size over the years, the right-hand column, the right-hand side of the graph there shows the average gross tonnage of vessels entered in the club, and on the left-hand side is the average premium per gross tonne. The premium per gross tonne has gone down. I mean, it's relatively flat, actually, from about 2010 onwards, but it's gone down slightly since 2014-2015. But if you look at the average size of vessel over that period, it goes in the opposite direction, because this is, in effect, a function of what is widely referred to as churn. That is to say, the replacement of older, higher-rated vessels by newer, lower-rated ships. And as individual unit sizes have increased, so the average rate per tonne has declined. It's also a sign, too, of the intrinsic competition, the natural dynamics of competition within the international group, and the fact that vessels are getting younger as well, which has an effect on that. But what I think is relatively gratifying is that from 2012 onwards, there's been a good deal of stability in terms of the average rate per tonne. And I think when you look at the development of our underwriting results, and in particular our premium volumes, per tonne, they acquit themselves well by reference to other clubs within the group. Retained claims and loss ratio development shows a similar trend. This line here is the 5-year trailing loss ratio, gross loss ratio on the American club's business since 2008. And as you can see, it's gone down fairly consistently, particularly over the last 4 or 5 years. That is to say that as at October 20th of each year, looking back 5 years on the previous 5 years' results, the cumulative loss ratio of business has been in decline, and that indicates that, in short, records have been getting better and underwriting results have been in a relatively benign trajectory. That, of course, is taken against the graph or the line that you saw earlier with the average cost of claims per tonne. And of course, they came down quite substantially into 2015, have risen a bit into 2016. But the overall trend of the green line, we think, is favourable, and we are optimistic that when we look at this again in another 12 months, as the 2015 year continues to show stability and the 2016 year improves, the trailing 5-year results will show a further degree of improvement, or certainly no worse than stabilisation. Investment performance is an increasingly important part of the way that clubs are looked at these days, and of course it's been a relatively difficult market for the last few years in some areas. Back in 2008, when the meltdown of the markets took place, we lost just over 8%. If you look at what the results were for the S&P 500 and the Dow at that time, which lost well in excess of 30% each, you can see that wasn't a bad result, because our municipal bond portfolio in particular performed very well over that time. We kept faith with the stock market, though, to some extent, between 2008 and 2009. And of course, they rebounded fairly encouragingly in the 12 months which followed the meltdown. So we got nearly a 12.5% return that year. It was pretty good the next year, okay the following year, good the next year again, pretty good the next year after that. But as you all know, mainly because the bull market has been running for a long time now, particularly in the United States, as far as stocks are concerned, and also because the yields on bonds have been fairly minimal, to say the least, particularly government bonds, that reduced to only 28 basis points for the year ending December the 31st, 2015. As at the end of October, however, I'm pleased to say that we were up at 2.4% for the year to date in 2016, which I think, again, compares reasonably well with what the market at large has been seeing over that period. So those returns, annualized over a period of years, I think, again, per annum are at the better end, probably, of industry experience. The development of free reserves per tonne is taken in two forms here. The blue line is our statutory free reserves, which is to say those in accordance with the regulation of the New York State Financial Services Department. And the red line, or the black line, is it? It should be a red line, but it's a black line. Very good. Is our GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, free reserve figure per tonne as at the end of September. That's the third quarter. That tends to be the low point for the year. Incidentally, in accounting terms, we produce quarterly figures by way of a surplus statement, and more particularly statutory returns to the New York State Financial Services Department, and the September 30th figures tend to be the lowest point for a variety of accounting reasons, basically, at that point. But it's still, very much in line with with what we had as a general result in earlier years. Turning now to Eagle Ocean Marine. Eagle Ocean Marine is the fixed premium brand of the American Club. It's gaining an increasing footprint here in the Eastern Mediterranean. We started it about 5 years ago, actually, and its key features are it's a smaller ship fixed premium facility. The underwriting, the actual security behind the primary security behind the risk is that of the American Club, but under a different brand name in effect. It's operated by Eagle Ocean Agencies, which is a sister company of Shipowners Claims Bureau, which runs the club. It's reinsured by Lloyd's and London market insurers. In fact, the first $10 million of any one claim is shared 50-50 between the club and Lloyd's quota share, or co-insurers, and has been arranged on that basis for some time. We can cover up to $500 million per risk, which is quite a significant amount of indemnity. The majority of our business actually is written at lower limits than that, because most owners, perhaps in this particular sector, don't require such high limits. It provides broad P&I and defence cover, very much equivalent to what the club does in that respect. It's aimed at vessels under 12,500 gross tonnes. In fact, the average unit size is about 2,500, and it's directed towards non-US local and regional operators. It's focused exclusively on the fixed premium sector. We're not in this business to attack, the mutuality that forms the basis of the international group. Clearly not, but there is still a significant fixed premium sector, probably about 10% of global tonnage, that finds its P&I insurance in this way. We think we have, and I think with justification, unsurpassed global and service capabilities. Obviously, the service that you'd expect here in Greece from our local office, which is exceptional, and anywhere else in the world where we have offices, London, Shanghai, Hong Kong and so on, is available to Eagle Ocean Marine insureds, and it's developing a strong market footprint, particularly in Asia. There's a lot of demand for this kind of cover in Asia, we find, but with growing volume and profitability, I'll come on to that in a moment, we think it's increasingly a decent option for those owners who want this kind of P&I treatment. So far as distribution of management domicile is concerned, you'll see that there is a very large interest, 79% in total actually, from Southeast Asia and Northeast Asia. Northeast Asia mainly being Greater China, Southeast Asia being Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia and the Philippines in particular. But the EMEA part of it, a lot of it out of Greece and increasingly in the Eastern Mediterranean, has been growing in the last couple of years. And those who are interested in receiving a quote from a fixed premium insurer are encouraged to turn to us and see what we can do to help in that area. By vessel type, again, as you might imagine, there's a fairly large sector represented by tugs, barges and small craft, general cargo. Again, there's a fairly equal balancing of most areas of tonnage in respect to which you'd expect this fixed premium sector to make up the business. It's done very well, actually, from a financial point of view, which, of course, adds strength to the results of the American club, because as it is an American club facility, the positive results of Eagle Ocean Marine go straight to the benefit of the American club's results. And you can see here that the premium development since we started the facility back in 2011 has been pretty much cumulatively on a 45-degree angle upwards. And the level of claims in relation to that premium has been, particularly in the last 3 or 4 years, very modest. So premium going up, claims maintaining a degree of stability, which, as you can see from the note there at the bottom, shows that we have a cumulative combined ratio of 62% as at October the 31st. And I think for any marine business in the current climate, actually, that isn't bad. And I think it compares very favorably with a number of our competitors in this particular space. So, where does the way ahead lie, we ask ourselves? Well, I'll tell you. The American club now, I suggest, have core indicators that reflect general market dynamics. We might imagine the churn effect is indicated there, as I showed earlier. Premium pricing is still relatively challenged. But our tonnage is rising. Vince will talk a little bit more about that just in a moment. Our premiums are relatively stable, and we have, I think you will agree, balanced sector weightings. Our attritional claims are emerging modestly, and pool claims, as you saw from the earlier graph, are quite benign at this point in time. Eagle Ocean is progressing well. I think that our investment performance, though it's good, comparatively speaking, does nonetheless indicate certain, volatility that's likely to remain in the investment markets for the time being, particularly in light of the recent elections and Brexit and what might be going on in France at the next election and so on. So I think there's an uncertainty of market landscape that lies ahead. Our service capabilities are steadily expanding, not only in relation to the existing offices that we have, for example, here in Greece, but also, as at the end of July, we opened a new office in Houston to provide local service both to American owners in the Gulf and also those other members of the club that visit the United States Gulf. The American Hellenic Initiative, which Ilias Sakiris will talk about in much greater depth. This was an investment made by the club, as many of you know, into this new Solvency II insurer of hull risks very recently, and it's doing very well. And as I say, Ilias will tell you more about that in a moment. We are continuing to look at diversification by product line, but we'll do that in a very prudent way, particularly as we are about to celebrate our centennial. The American club will be 100 years old on on St. Valentine's Day. So it'll be many, hugs and kisses all round, actually, on that day. We were founded on February the 14th, 1917. We have just published and are in the process of distributing now a centennial history of the club, which many of you, of course, will receive over the next few weeks. The actual distribution of it is quite a logistic exercise, actually. So we haven't distributed it as fully yet as we intend to. But I think you'll find it a very interesting story. It was written by a chap called Richard Blodgett, who's a professional corporate historian. And it tells an interesting story of the club against the background not only of American shipping, but world shipping from the period of World War I onward. So that's quite interesting. Looking forward by way of general outlook, I think all the indications are, at least all the predictions are, that global GDP will rise modestly in 2017. The trade component of GDP, which has risen dramatically in the last 20 years, mainly because of the effect of China entering the world economy in such a significant way over recent years, that'll remain flatter by all accounts. There will be some degree of geopolitical tension. The extent to which that will follow on Mr. Trump entering the White House remains to be seen. But there's also a concern about protectionism as well, and that's not just to be taken in an American context. Obviously, there are political movements in Western Europe that are protectionist, at least publicly speaking, by inclination, and that's not good for world trade generally. I think freights will trend upward. I think we're seeing that to some extent, and of course that has had a benevolent knock-on effect in the S&P market. But I think, well, obviously you know this better than I do, quite frankly. But I think sustainability of freight increases will probably remain somewhat challenged. The great claims moderation, I call it. The fact that, as most clubs will tell you, the claims have been relatively benign at all levels over the last 3 or 4 years. I suppose that must end at some stage. I mean, we haven't really seen it yet, but I suspect that it may be coming to an end, particularly if the shipping market picks up, as we all hope, over the next year or two. Exposure to large claims, well, that's volatile, obviously, as we've seen from the results of the pool over recent years. I think there'll probably be a continuation of uncertainty in the investment markets, where investors will struggle to get yield. So I don't think that any hope that you can subvent underwriting losses by investment income, to a large degree at least, is realistic for the future. Pricing power will continue to be challenged, I suspect, but I think that it will improve. And there is a hope, I suppose, from those like us and Ilias and on the Hull side and so on, that there may be more normalization in the marine insurance sector for a variety of reasons. In other words, the rates for Hull and other areas of business do actually start to match the risks that are presented to underwriters, although, again, even on the Hull side, results have been relatively good in terms of claims exposure in recent years. But perhaps any marine insurer would say this, there may be cause for cautious optimism that normalization may follow. So, the way ahead, last slide, steady as she goes. That's a cliche, but I've said it so many times that I always think it's worth saying. We will continue to have a disciplined approach to risk selection and pricing. Loss prevention and claims control obviously are a very important part of the American club's interface with its members and the services it offers, and that's obviously true of other clubs as well, but we do pride ourselves considerably on what we're able to do in that area. We will continue to be prudently involved in focused diversification, American Hellenic being a signal case in point in recent months. EOM is now well established, as you'll have gathered from the earlier slides, and American Hellenic is doing well and holds a great deal of promise for the future. We have uncompromising solidarity with our members in difficult times. It's when times are difficult that the value of your P&I cover becomes most apparent. We're very conscious of that. Loyalty to the club is earned. It's not expected, and it's earned best, we think, through the outstanding service that we offer, and not just here, but across the world. Staying ahead of the service curve is very important. I think all clubs, again, are very conscious of that, and here we are constantly attempting to improve what we do for our members in a wide variety of ways. So let's party like it's 1999. I think that was a Prince record, wasn't it? Was it? I think maybe I'm completely out of date, although it's actually 2017 in our case. So we are going to have a very big party in New York. We'll have a party here as well, probably later on in the year. But June the 22nd will be the centennial dinner, which will be held at Cipriani's in New York. And it promises to be a big event. And, you know, everybody is most welcome to attend. And we look forward to welcoming you to New York, both then and at any other time in the year that you happen to be traveling through our fair city. So, ladies and gentlemen, many thanks indeed. I was going to tell you a joke about Mr. Trump. And so I'm detaining you far too long, really, with all this, but I will actually tell you. A psychiatrist dies, and he goes to heaven, and he's met by St. Peter, you know, who is the gatekeeper there, the pearly gates. And St. Peter's going through his CV, you know, what he did in life. St. Peter looking very, very worried, actually, as he's going through the CVs. And then he alights upon the fact that this fellow is a psychiatrist in his earthly life. So he really becomes very interested in this and says to the psychiatrist, "My goodness, you were a psychiatrist. Is this true?" He said, "Yes, I was a psychiatrist." "Oh, wow, that's a relief. You dealt with all kinds of psychiatric conditions, you know, anything?" Yeah, everything. I had a very large practice, so, you know, I did every kind of psychiatric treatment, really. This is very good news," says St. Peter. He looks around rather furtively and says to the psychiatrist, "You know, we're not saying this generally. We're trying to keep this a secret, but we've got a big problem here in heaven. You know, the big guy upstairs, he's got a real problem." "What is it?" says the psychiatrist. "Well, God thinks he's Donald Trump." Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
I think that most of you have gotten to know our next speaker very well over the last year and a half, being very active in this region with the building of the American Hellenic. Vince Solarino is our COO and our president. And please welcome Vince.
Well, it is great to be back again. Good to see a lot of you again. In fact, I'm here so often, as Dorothea said, that I should start learning to speak Greek better than I do. Other than Kalimera, Kalispera, Kalinikdid, of course, Tasus Pastu Tikafala. I have to expand on that. Well, I wasn't going to be telling any jokes because, you know, I didn't think it was appropriate, especially political satire and comic relief. But Joe started it, and it seems like a lot of this is directed towards Donald Trump. So, as many of you who know me well, I'm very impartial on my political presentations. But I think today I have to balance the scales in favor of this is part of the joke. Donald Trump. Last year I told you my Christmas parrot joke, both here and in London. And just in case you forgot, you laughed hysterically. But this year, I think I will tell more of not a political joke or political satire. I thought I would do an impression of Hillary Clinton, because I've heard many impressions of Donald Trump at his expense. So I studied for weeks. I practiced for weeks and weeks to do a perfect impression of Hillary Clinton. But at the end of the day, I just couldn't do it. I found that I just could not lie as much and as well as Hillary can. Are they laughing downstairs? So that's my joke for the day. Joe had gone over most of the facts and figures of the American Club. And we are excited about the American Club's prospects of the future. and the American Hellenic Hull Project was one of our main initiatives. I'm happy to report that on June 24th of 2016, we have received our license to operate as a full hull insurance company, licensed under Solvency II, very strict regime, as many of you know, in Cyprus. And since that licensing date, even before that licensing date, we had attracted quite a bit of the market. There is a lot of excitement in the market, not only locally, but internationally. And I'm proud to say that we are ahead of our projections at this point in time. So we're very excited about that. And Ilias Sakiris will speak in more detail about the American Atlantic Hull. And as Joe had referred earlier, I am pleased to report also that the club has increased its tonnage from the beginning of this policy year, 2016-17 policy year. We increased it by a net in and out tonnage of 1,500,000 tons. That relates to about $2.5 million worth of new tonnage coming in, and a fantastic feat, especially in this market. Now, this success is due to our global business development strategy headed up by Dorothea Ioannou, who you all know here, and her talented team of regional business development directors worldwide. This team cannot work well, and the business development project cannot work well unless it's connected to all of our departments. Tom Hamilton, heading up our underwriting department, embraced the business development strategy, and his team have combined their efforts along with the business development team to service the market and to attract new business, and it's working as we had intended, and we're happy to see that it's working so well. Now, we say these things and we mean them. The American Club is committed to its membership and to the shipping community, especially here in Greece. You've given us a lot of support over our new life as we had regrown the American Club from 1996 onward. We have extended every possible assistance in helping our membership during a sustained economic downturn, carrying soft freight rates that are way too low to carry your operating costs. We continue to be sensitive to these issues, and we will continue to assist our members as best we can in the new 2017 and 18 policy year. We're here for you. We have a great team worldwide, an excellent team right here in Greece that provides unsurpassed service, and we're proud to have that kind of a presentation and representation right here in Greece. So that is all I have to say, other than we wish you a happy new year, good health, good prosperity, and good new friendships for the coming year. So now I will introduce you to our wizard of the hull insurance market, Ilias Sakiris. Thank you all for coming again.
It's always good to be amongst friends and colleagues to make this presentation. It's always very, very glad. We met exactly 12 months ago, and I can confirm to you that American Hellenic was very, very good to its promise. Without further ado, I want to, okay, there you go. I want to start by saying that, as Vin said, we got our license end of June, so we start underwriting in 1st of July. The company, as you can appreciate, was one of the first Solvency II compliant companies in Europe. It was the Solvency II regime, apart from anything else, is an extremely strict environment, financial environment for all the insurance companies. Just to tell you that for every dollar that we actually earn, we need to have at least 99.5 cents on in the kitty in order to protect any potential losses that we might face. American Hellenic, apart from that, has actually secured its capital base 3 times more than it actually is required by the solvency requirement of Solvency II. And according to the European Union authorities, a company that's a Solvency II compliant carries an equivalent BBB rating. American Hellenic, as we have already said, is an autonomous marine underwriter. The American Club has actually made an investment in American Hellenic, and American Hellenic is a Cypriot-based insurance company with license, of course, within EU. The limits of cover remain at $10 million that we had promised to you, and also we have added in our products, let's say war IV, loss of hire, war P&I, up to 50 million. Of course, we will remain as a fixed premium, of course, underwriter. Here's the timeline where you will see the whole progress of American Hellenic. As you can see, the joint venture took shape in 1st of September 2015. And as you will see, the licensing process was enacted on the third quarter of 2016. Unfortunately, Cyprus was the last country in the European Union that actually enacted Solvency II law, and that's why we had such a delay. As you can appreciate, our first board meeting took place that quarter, and we commenced our roadshows around the world to spread the word that American Hellenic HAL is open for business. We are, of course, member, of the Insurance Association of Cyprus and of the Chamber of Shipping of Cyprus. We have, here you will see our new elect board. So Vince Solarin is our chairman, and our secretary is Andreas Yorkadis. Andreas Yorkadis is a very big law firm in Cyprus, who helped us also in setting up the company. Dorothea, you all know. Joe, of course, you just met. The two gentlemen from Cyprus, Mr. Dimos Dimou and Manolis Hadjimanolis, have immense experience in running insurance companies. One was the Flagstone's CEO, and Mr. Dimos Dimou was also part of the audit committee of the Cypriot Republic. And of course, James Cochran, which was the former superintendent of insurance of New York and a member of the board of American P&I. In addition, our actuaries is going to be Lux Actuaries. Lux Actuaries is they are chairing the Actuarial Association in Cyprus. KPMG are our internal auditors. There's a mistake here. Is our internal auditors, KPMG, and Moore Stevens are our external auditors. So as you can see, the governance is fairly independent, totally independent, and fully compliant with Solvency II requirements. Here you will see the panel of our insurers. Our insurance remains from $250,000, our own retention remains at $250,000. And this is the panel of the insurer as far as the excess of loss is concerned. All our insurances are done with Messrs. Guy Carpenter and Matrix here in Greece. This provides, of course, as you can imagine, extra protection to, apart from the capital base of American Hellenic, it provides extra protection and for our clients. Our underwriting criteria remain basically the same. We will be insuring vessels that are members of the IAX, White Flag. We don't take singletons. The average age of fleets should be up to 15 years old. Sanctions, of course, as usual, EU, UN, and US. And we only do broker business. We don't do direct business. And last but not least, our pen remains independent. That means that the underwriting is done in Cyprus. The underwriting has no constraints by any insurer. Therefore, our pricing remains fair and accurate as far as our client is concerned. This is the global reach already that the American Hellenic is enjoying. As you can see, we have been approached by brokers from virtually all over the world, even from India and Hong Kong, of course, because we just started our roadshow. Last month we were having an extensive roadshow in Far East. Currently, we have seen around 4,000 vessels. Out of those, only 920 we have accepted for entry in our company. Greece, of course, remains our main producing area, where we are very, very thankful for that. But as far as the ships is concerned, only 30% is represented from Greece. The rest is from international business. The underwriting, as you can see, is fairly balanced as far as the types of vessels. The other, of course, the special vessels, they do include some brown water business. That's why there is a fairly high number there. This is the average client of American Hellenic currently, which is a Panamax-sized vessel with an average premium of $64,000, and our average line of participation is 6.72. Our claims performance till now. Our claims performance currently, the longest period for somebody to wait for his money was 14 days. The shortest was 2 days. Believe it or not, we have already settled a CTL, which is a major particular average claims. Therefore, these are indicative on a very big claims. Our current loss ratio, of course, is 25.7. I would like to remain like that. We don't, I don't think it will, but it's something that we're proud to report. This is the team that will be serving you 24/7. As you can see, this is the future, all young people ready to serve around the world. The future for us, we're very optimistic about the future, as we are planning to have American Hellenic rated by an international rating agency to carry its own independent rating. And we will keep, as you can see, the whole team is Greeks, and we remain with Greeks. And we hope to be able to serve you all in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I am now what stands between you and our cocktail reception. But I think that what I'm going to talk about is probably the most interesting part. We've heard from Joe and Vince and Elias on where we stand and what we do and what's going on with the club and American Hellenic. But I'm going to speak about the people. Because it's the people that make the difference. It's the people that have taken us through our whole journey over the last century. So it's the people that I'm going to talk about. And the American Club, we're very, very proud of being able to do what we do on a very personal basis. And we're very proud of all the personal relationships that we've created, not only here, but across the globe. First, I'm going to speak about our board. Well, I'm going to introduce you to them. I know that some of you know some of our board members. Our board is comprised of people that represent the shipping sectors of every single major shipping hub across the world. 8 of these people are of Greek origin, and they span across 3 countries. And I think it's also interesting for you to know that all of our board members that are in this region are sitting right next to you in this audience. And we have a very active board, and they've been a big part of what we've been doing over the last years. Now, this is a map which shows you where we're placed. We're pretty much placed across the whole globe. And where am I going to start? I'm going to start with Piraeus, because this is the office that you know. And yes, Adonis is still the guy with the beard. Okay. No, we are gender neutral. We only hire the best people. We pay no attention to whether they're male or female. Okay, I want to make that very clear right now. Okay. The Piraeus office. From a 4-person office in 2005, we now stand 11 people strong. We grew as the club increased its membership in Europe, and especially in this country right here in Greece. Today, the team of 11 support both the business development, as Vince mentioned, as well as the claims service. And they add just about over 100 years of maritime experience across almost all sectors of the industry. Yes, 100 years. They don't look it, but it's 100 years. Believing in becoming a part of the regional community, the club invested in local talent with local and international experience and education in order to be able to provide the high level of regional know-how for the shipping community within the region, and also using the local language. As Elias mentioned, everybody's Greek. But everybody knows the Piraeus office very well. So I'm going to go through and take you through all of our offices so you get to see what kind of access you have, what kind of global reach you have through this local access. So I'm going to start with New York. I don't know, I know a lot of you may be aware of the fact that the American Club has a special sort of know-how when it comes to sanctions because of who we are. But I don't know how many of you know that actually the American Club was born of sanctions. As was mentioned earlier, we're about to come on to our 100-year anniversary, and it was almost 100 years ago that the U.S. ship-owning sector suddenly found themselves without P&I cover as a result of British sanctions in 1916 during World War I. And as a result, the American Club was founded to fill that need. And the American Club has gone through a number of ups and downs, and at one point in its history over the last 100 years was probably the largest P&I club, I think. But it's been the recent history really that's made a big difference. And it's the club's management through the leadership of Joe and Vince over the last 20 years, which is the reason that we're not only here in Greece today and we're not only in New York, but has been the driving force behind how the club was able to enter into the international market and span its membership and its presence across continents. The New York office is our head office, and you can see quite a number of people there, and it's the nucleus of our organization. In New York, you're going to find the core of every single department. And I need to look at my paper because there's a lot of departments. So in New York, you're going to find executive management, finance, accounts, underwriting. Tom, the head of our underwriting team, is here as well. Legal, claims, loss prevention, surveys, technical, business development, compliance, human resources, IT, actuarial, analytics, reinsurance, and global administration. It is the root of our global family. How did we expand? Well, first we went into London, obviously. London was where we first set our sights in order to meet the needs of a changing world of trade and insurance, and also the changing face of the club as we expanded into Europe. The London office serves as a hub for marine insurance broker relations with marketing and business development liaisons, as well as a very highly experienced claims staff, and they bring over 60 years of combined experience to the growing family of the American Club. After London, we went to Piraeus, but we spoke about Piraeus, so I'm going to flip over to Shanghai, which opened up in 2007. As the club continued to grow, and actually started to grow in particular in Asia, we opened up our doors in Shanghai in 2007. Today, the office is comprised of 5 maritime professionals, both from a risk assessment perspective, as well as legal and claims backgrounds. And in fact, the managing director is also of Greek nationality, Dimitris Sirinakis. It represents both the local know-how and language capability necessary to become a part of and service that community. It merges the Western can-do attitude of the American Club as well as what we do here in Greece, and also with the regional local know-how of local professionals, and it adds almost 40 years of combined experience to the American Club's team. Recognizing the next major shipping hub for the Far East in terms of broking base and services, and following a need to connect that platform into the ship-owning market of South and Southeast Asia, the club then opened up its doors in Hong Kong. Tapping into the abilities and network of maritime professionals with extensive experience in the region, both from technical claims and business development, the club boasts a team of over 50 years of combined experience and know-how in that region. Now, Joe mentioned earlier that we've actually expanded now in the United States, and that's in Houston. Recognizing the growing epicenter of the shipping market in the Gulf Coast, the club moved into Houston over the summer. And that has given us an even greater ability to serve the market, not only in the US, but globally, because of the nature of the trade of all of our members. With Jana Byron, also a Greek-American, by the way, heading the office, and now Kelly Haas, we offer a combined experience of 25 years in the maritime industry. Oh. But it wouldn't be fair not to also mention how our know-how and our depth has become diversified and strengthened by joining forces with the Hellenic Hull management team. So this is our global force. This is what you get through this office. So through the presence of the Piraeus office here, you get the know-how, the expertise, and the experience of every single individual in the club in every single region in the world. But it's not only about this. As I mentioned, it's the board. It's about everybody here. So for the American Club, what we try and do is become an integral part of each and every community within which we situate our offices. And we consider everybody here also a part of our global family. So thank you, everybody, and wishing you all a very happy holiday. And we can all go down for refreshments.